Hi guys, some brilliant news. Secular media secular scientists have now discovered that the moon lies inside Earth's atmosphere. This absolutely, it makes me laugh in a way. But as science catches up to the Bible, so to speak, and realizes that we are on a flat Earth, or if you don't believe that, at bare minimum, the center of the universe and not rotating. Everything rotates above us. More and more revelations get made known. So here's RT News. Look at this article on my desktop, guys. A staggering discovery reveals moon lies inside Earth's atmosphere. So they think the atmosphere goes way out to the moon. So this raises a number of interesting questions. Just in case you think this is just a news media article and they're hyping up a load of rubbish, I'm going to show you the scientific website that has the article on it. And if you look at the headline, Earth's atmosphere stretches out to the moon and beyond. Don't forget, okay, the Michelson-Morley Experiment, which is really, really interesting. That actually proved that we are not going around the sun. Okay. They tried to disprove it. In fact, Einstein tried to disprove it because they were so hooked on this Copernican model they didn't want to let go of. So Einstein invented a formula to actually refute the Michelson-Morley Experiment and answer it. Because what Michelson-Morley wanted to do is he wanted to actually show us our movement through space around the sun by measuring light. And what actually happened is he couldn't pick up any movements. So it returned what they call as a null answer. There wasn't any movement. There was null. So here's an interesting video. I just want you to watch a snippet of it. Where is it here? This is exactly what I'm talking about, and how Einstein went about trying to deceive the world.
This null result was one of the greatest puzzles of physics at the end of the 19th century. One possibility was that velocity would be zero and no fringe shift would be expected. But this implies that the Earth is somehow a preferred object. Only with respect to the Earth would the speed of light be c as predicted by Maxwell's equations. This is tantamount to assuming that the Earth is the central body of the universe. Douglas C. Giancoldi. But the die-hard Copernicans of that day were not about to accept the prima facie results of Michelson's experiment. They knew the catastrophic scientific, cultural, and religious implications if it was experimentally shown that the Earth is fixed in space. In a word, the whole world would have been turned upside down, literally and figuratively. Pressured to provide a scientific answer to the world, they searched for a way to make it appear that the first light beam did indeed provide 6/6 of the speed required for an Earth moving around the sun. To do so, they thought up an ingenious but devious explanation. As noted above, they claimed the Earth's movement around the sun contracted the metal enclosure in which the first light beam traveled.
Can you believe
If the length of the housing was contracted, then the first light beam does not need to travel as far as when the housing is not contracted. This would account for why the speed of the two light beams did not differ much. With this contrived explanation, they proposed to the world that the contraction of Michelson's apparatus was the reason the Earth appeared to be motionless. In effect, if someone said to them, "You claim the Earth is moving, but you admit you cannot detect that movement by any experiment," they would retort, "Well, we can't detect it because every time we try to do so, the length of the experimental apparatus shrinks just enough to conceal the movement, which makes it impossible to measure the Earth's movement." Again, we see the fallacy of petitio principii in play. From start to finish, the whole enterprise was ad hoc. Length contraction wasn't even contemplated previously, much less was it an established fact of science. But in this emergency situation, length contraction was invented on the spot so that the science establishment would have at least some hypothetical answer as to why Michelson's experiment showed the Earth was motionless. Everyone could breathe a sigh of relief. The irony, as of this date, is that no one has ever detected a length contraction in a moving object. In fact, modern physicists can't even agree on what length contraction is or how it would be manifested.
So, you can see how we've all been fooled and how Einstein, who we put on this pedestal, is God, and we've got to believe everything he says. But in actual fact, Einstein isn't God, and they just invent a whole lot of rubbish to stick to their stupid model. Okay, so why am I bringing in Michelson-Morley's experiment into this? It's because if we have a look, sorry, there's something I forgot to tell you. Einstein actually, that length contraction principle was built into his theory of relativity, special relativity. And he concluded that also, in addition to the length contraction, is that there is no ether. There is no ether, and that the light travels through a vacuum, and that's why you can't measure it. And the vacuum doesn't need anything in it. It doesn't need any ether in it. Or dare I say, it doesn't need any atmosphere in it. So that's my connection, ether with atmosphere. What's the difference between ether and atmosphere? In fact, this is how mad the globalists are, okay? On one hand, they say there's no ether in the atmosphere. Sorry, there's no ether in space, okay? They even had the view that there's no atmosphere in space until this article came out. So there's no atmosphere in space, there's no ether in space, but there's this dark matter that just appears and disappears and appears and disappears and appears and disappears. And so, another fact, there is something in this vacuum, but it's magical. And that's why we can never measure it or see it, because it just appears and then disappears. So, they want to have their cake and eat it. They want there to be ether in space, but when we use that ether to try and prove whether we move or not, they then say, oh, no, the ether doesn't exist. Can you see the contradiction? Can you see the hypocritical way that they argue things? It's good for something to exist when it suits their formula, and it's not good if it doesn't suit their formula. So they just pick and choose whatever, they just pluck out of the air whatever they need to substantiate their religion, basically. So let's go to this website I found. Where is this website? Come on. Oh, yeah, solar system. Yeah. So it's quite a good website, and you can understand the music that this thing plays behind the scenes just memorizes you. I'll let you listen to some of the music. Watch here. Listen to some of the music. Yeah, so I just turn it off because after a while it becomes distracting. It does. It actually becomes very hypnotic, to be fair. So I just turn it off. So anyway, you can actually view, you can see the website address, solarsystemscope.com. But you can set it up and you can view it in realistic mode or in unrealistic mode. So I've put it in realistic mode because I want to actually get a glimpse of what's happening here. So can you see the moon there? Can you see the Earth here? Right. First of all, the Earth is a perfect circle. And here's the moon, okay? So they are now saying, secular scientists saying that the Earth's atmosphere actually goes all the way out to the moon and beyond. In other words, the moon is kind of like halfway, I think they say. So this is what they want you to believe. Okay? The moon is there. The moon is there. The atmosphere goes out to the moon and beyond, they say. Okay, and there's the sun. And now what they want you to believe is that, okay, not only does the atmosphere go out to the moon, the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And not only that, okay, this atmosphere stays in place even though we're moving around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. So you tell me, how on earth can this atmosphere reach out as far as the moon and beyond and stay in place whilst we're traveling 67,000 miles around the sun? Surely it should be left behind. Surely the atmosphere should be left behind. And if that much atmosphere is actually leaving our Earth, surely we wouldn't have any atmosphere left on Earth if it's leaving like that. So I'm going to tell you that, I'm going to suggest my theory, Dino's theory, okay, that there is ether in space. And it's not this atmosphere that they're talking about. And ether is everywhere, and we can use it to measure our movement, and we don't move. So what we're finding is we're finding more and more truth coming out. And the truth is not pointing to this model. The truth is pointing to the flat earth model, the ancient Hebrew model, where the moon and the sun and the stars are inside the firmament, or inside our atmosphere, okay? And that this is the ether that they're talking about. Our atmosphere is the ether that they're talking about. These stars are actually inside, because the Bible says that this firmament is actually hard like metal. Okay, so they're not here on the outside. They're actually inside this black. On this drawing, it's black, but it's actually transparent. You know, and it keeps the waters above the firmament out, so we can have an atmosphere and air and clouds and everything. So what I'm finding exciting here is not only is the biblical model, flat earth model, being proved more and more to be correct, but people are now seeing through the lies of the secular scientists and media, okay? And I wanted to show you this article by RT. They talk about how NASA is wasting the money on the topic of space. Listen to what they say.
What if I told you that we have now spent $46 billion of your taxes on a project to study deep space? Okay, you would either say, hey, that's great, Sanchez. I want to know more about deep space. Or you might say, I could give a hoot about deep space. All right, keep the money here where we need it for our kids, our schools, and our roads. What you definitely should say is, okay, what do we get for that $46 billion? Good question. Because that's the question we asked ourselves here when we were having our editorial meeting this morning, and Michelle Greenstein's been assigned the distinction of finding out for us. Okay, what'd you find out?
All right, so here's the situation. For the past 15 years, NASA has been working on building this heavy lift vehicle that will take us to the moon and then on to Mars, and also on building the infrastructure between the Earth, the moon, and Mars. Now, this is a beautiful, beautiful goal, right?
Sure.
It truly is. But according to aerospace analyst Laura Forzik, who just put out a research paper that includes data from fiscal year 2019's budget, we've been spending about $4 billion annually on this program, and we're not really seeing the return. So I reached out to her. Let's see what she had to say about this.
Cool.
The main purpose of the big NASA heavy lift vehicle program for the human space exploration is to give us, as a country, a big goal to go towards.
So her take is that the real purpose of these programs, these space exploration programs, are symbolic, right? They give us a sense of national pride. They unite the country, like she said, like
symbolic.
Around this big giant goal. So we've spent, according to her research, $14 billion on the Space Launch System, $16 billion on the Orion capsule, which is what NASA says will take us to the moon, and then on to Mars. What do we have to show for it? Well, the Orion capsule did launch a few years ago, but without a crew, and this was a private launch, and the Space Launch System has yet to take flight. So in terms of crewed flights, we're probably not going to see this for a number of years in the future, and by that time, we'll have spent 20 years on this program, but also close to $60 billion on this project that we seem to have already done in 1968. So I asked Laura Forzik about this. Let's see what she had to say.
You can't really say that what NASA is trying to do now is already done in the 60s, because the technology is different and the mission behind it, although similar, is different. So the Saturn V rocket was fantastic for its time, but it was limited. There's just an argument as to how much money should be spent on one way versus the other, or on one project versus the other.
It seems like what she's suggesting is that NASA and these grandiose projects are being used for political posturing, right? Let me stand in front of the American people and say, I'm going to get us, a la JFK, to the moon, or I'm going to do this and that. But in the end, it doesn't accomplish anything.
Right, and every president kind of makes an announcement like that. And she would actually agree with you. She was quoted in Ars Technica yesterday saying that these are political projects, not practical ones.
That's an interesting point. Hey, good stuff. Good reporting.
Thank you.
All right,
So in other words, guys, it's symbolic. Our space program is symbolic. It's to make the human race or the country feel strong. We don't need God. We can get to the moon. Yay! But the thing is with these projects is they're so long that when governments give them the money, they go back to governments and say, look, we can't show you results during your administration period, but this is going to take longer. This is a long-term thing. And so the government gets voted out or changed or whatever, and the next government comes in, and then they play the same message again. So they're in a scenario where they never have to prove anything to anyone, because the bodies they need to prove to come and go all the time. So it's always this thing that's distant and in the future and is coming. And then they should make up these tales and show us all this CGI wizardry about how good they are. But they never attain their goals. And their goals are continuously slipping. And no one can hold them to account, because it's always just over the hill, just over the horizon. It's like in 10 years' time, or it's in 20 years' time, or it's in 5 years' time, because I think the administration period is 4 or 5 years, So I think this is absolutely fantastic news, this discovery of the atmosphere, that the moon's in our atmosphere, scientific papers to go along with it, and how NASA is now wasting our money. And also what I find quite interesting behind this, remember, this is coming from RT News. They're talking about how NASA's wasting money here. It's almost like, if I put my conspiracy hat on, it's almost like they're saying to the powers that be, the elite, to say, hey, if you don't back off from our borders, this is like Russia saying this, if you don't back off from the Russian border, we are going to expose the whole space program as being fake. And we are just standing on your tippy toes as a warning. Be careful. Push us too far, and we're going to expose the whole lot. This is what I'm getting with my conspiracy hat, because it's RT News that are publishing the staggering discovery that reveals that the moon's inside our atmosphere. It's RT News that are saying that NASA is wasting our money. RT is Russia Today News. They're a mainstream news outlet, but they're paid for by Russia. So it's almost like Russia are subliminally saying to these people, watch it, push us too far, we're going to expose all these lies for what they are. So that's my conspiracy hat. Anyway, I'm all excited about this, guys. Jesus is coming soon. I reckon, I'm hoping 3 to 4 months' time, because everything's lining up. The end of the 70th year that Israel's become a nation. We need to start focusing on that I was just walking around in the kitchen and worshiping God, and just had, I don't know, it was almost like, in a way, I was mourning for the people that would be left behind. And I've really done all I can to testify about Jesus, to push his message out. But, you know, when you push too far, people will actually shut you down and you'll actually turn them off. So I'm trying to find that line to push as far as I can without actually, closing all hope of me ever getting in to their hearts, so to speak. But I do pray for them all the time, because it's the Holy Spirit that convicts. Anyway, guys, keep looking up. Great stuff. If you're not a flat earth believer, I'm not going to divide over it. You can continue believing in the globe, but except I think that is actually the great deception that the Bible talks about. But I'm not going to divide over it. As long as Jesus is your personal Lord and Savior, that makes me happy. I have friends that believe in the globe model and not in the flat earth model. It's not something to divide over, okay? So, yeah, keep looking up, and remember that the truth will always come out. Thank you. Bye. Like and subscribe, please.